All right, now we can talk about those rowdy Zivics I was hanging out with last night. I jumped the gun. Sorry, I'm so excited. I told you the rowdy. I told you about his two older brothers. Fritzie had the most success in the ring. He was an amazing man, and he was a self-proclaimed brawler, a true street fighter that really turned into an outstanding boxer. And he attributed his success to growing up in what was then the rough and tumble Lawrenceville neighborhood. Now, I was just in Lawrenceville this afternoon. A bunch of us went over to Clemente Museum. That place is trendy and awesome. But back in the 1920s, you didn't want to go out after dark. His famous quote was, "You either had to fight or stay in the house." My brothers and I went out. Sounds like a bunch of hard-headed Croatians. We all know a couple of those, don't we? Early in his career, which began in the 1930s, he defeated Charles Burley, handing him one of only 12 losses in Burley's career, and he won 84 fights in that one. He then lost a heartbreaking split decision against another Pittsburgh boxing legend, world light heavyweight champ Billy Conn. And after that, he ran off a string of wins against former champions, Johnny Jadek, Jackie Burke, and Sammy Angat. That put him into a world title bout against welterweight champ Henry Hammerin' Hank Armstrong. And Fritzie was a 4-1 underdog. Nobody thought he had a shot in this fight. He ended up winning a 15-round decision. Matter of fact, it was one of the few that Armstrong ever lost. A year later, in a title defense rematch, he knocked him out with a TKO, the first time Armstrong had ever been knocked out in a match, even though it was a TK1. That was in the 12th round. He had gotten better and better and better. He continued to fight until 1946. He fought 7 future Hall of Famers and 9 champions. He lost a tough setback to the great Sugar Ray Robinson. And a lot of boxing fans will tell you Sugar Ray, still widely considered pound for pound, maybe the best boxer of all time. But he rebounded and took out the raging bull, Jake LaMotta. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1993 with a career record of 158 wins, 9 draws, 64 losses. Over half of those wins were by knockout. We lost Fritzie back in 1984. But here to remember him is his daughter, Jan Zivic. Come on up here, Jan. You know they're going to be hooting and hollering over there.
I'll be short. I went to Pitt, and I just wanted to mention the ball game. There are a lot of things about Dad that all of our 3 tables are very proud of. I would like to mention just a couple that you probably don't know. First of all, in your programs, you will find that my name is Mary Ann. That's a mistake. My name is Jan, or Janice. And when Dad won the title 2 years before I was born, I had 2 older brothers, and Mom got poster-sized pictures of Dad with his belt on, which we have at our table tonight. If anyone would like to see it, we brought Dad's title belt. But anyway, the thing I want to tell you about Dad is he was a poet, or he thought so. So on each of the pictures of him that Mother put in the kids' bedrooms, my name's Janice Marie, but that didn't work in his poetry, so he wrote on my picture, "To my darling Janice Mitzi, with all my love, your daddy Fritzie." True story. And to this day, many of my uncles who are sadly gone called me Mitzi, because that's what Dad named me, and they adored him. That's the second thing I'd like to say about Dad. He was pretty tough in the ring. He was known for a variety of things in the ring, and I'm happy to say most of it was that he won. And he used to say what was already quoted, but people would say to him, "You know, you're so nice, you're so friendly." He was actually quite charming, and they would say, "How'd you get like that in the ring?" And he said, "Well, I didn't go in to play the piano." True story. But what I'm trying to say is there were a lot of things about Dad people loved. My mother, loved him. Sorry. So I went to Pitt. I used to teach at Upper St. Clair, and I moved to San Francisco. Just this month, I've been cleaning out my office and finding hundreds of pictures and thousands of pieces of paper. And one was a letter Dad wrote to Mom in 1931, in which he said, I love San Francisco. We came out here to have, he had a fight, and he said, I have seen the city, and I absolutely love it, and we should move here someday. So I did, in 1972. And, the thing about that letter was it was very affectionate, and he signed it with all my love, Helen, I will love you forever. He was so affectionate. If you look at all our family pictures, both of his sons, who are not Robert and John, which is what's in the program, but Chuck and Fritz, close enough. I actually think the program says his father's name was John, but Mike wasn't Joseph. So just a few errors in the program. Anyway, so what I wanted to tell you about Dad was he was a poet. He liked to write. I have 9 years of journals Dad wrote every single day. So those of you here who like to journal, and you know how sometimes it's difficult, every night he would come home and say, he was at Stoken's bar, and I'll mention that in a minute. He said, Helen thinks maybe I had too many beers tonight. So he did write honest things. And so he was a poet. He was very affectionate. He liked to write. And when I lost my cool for a second there talking about my mom, I want to talk about one other thing. We do have 3 tables over there, 117 and whatever the next one is. Let's hear it, folks. At the table are 4 of his grandchildren, and I would like them to stand up. We have Dad Fritz, my brother Fritz, and Fritz, my nephew. Fritz. And Fritz's sister, Jennifer, is Fritz and Jennifer, Chuck's children. Sarah, on the other side, Sarah, is Fritz's daughter, Sarah. And beside her is my daughter, Jessie. So Dad, 4 of his 7 grandchildren. Also, among his other brothers, Pete was named. And the Pete lineage fills the 3rd table. I can't name them all, but they're all related. Now, one more thing about Dad, for Pittsburghers who know, Pete Zivic had a bar, and 2 blocks down, the Stokens, John and Mary Stoken, had a bar. Well, Helen Stoken married Fritzie Zivic just blocks apart. They were brought up with parents who owned bar restaurants. And in the Stoken family, one of my mother's brothers was Lou, and Lou, as some of you may know, was one of Dad's seconds in the corner with him, fixing the cuts and wiping them down, et cetera. And tonight, Helene and Diane are Lou's daughters, and they're here tonight. So I leave you just 1 or 2 statistics. One is, if you haven't been there, you've heard about Madison Square Gardens in New York. Dad and Henry Armstrong's title fight held the record for the largest sports indoor crowd at that time in the United States. Largest crowd. And then they remodeled, and then there became outside huge sports arenas which had thousands, but at that time it was the largest. So I would like to leave you with a picture of Dad. He was a loving, loving father and a charming man. Those of you who knew him loved him or liked him, and we're all here because we loved or like one of these inductees, and I'm happy to say we, Zivics on the other side, have met many of them, and we could not be more proud than to be part of this group. Thank you.